You know that labor cost is one of our largest controllable costs. Keeping each employee in every store 5 minutes longer than necessary cost our company $20,000 per day, or $7 million per year nationwide. If we can lower labor costs 1.5% nationwide, we can save $36 million per year. That amounts to an increased bonus of about $1,500 per manager per year. Putting that money in your pocket is what this video is all about. And it can be done by simply scheduling.
Hi, I'm Wally Power. My goal as training director is simple: to put money in your pocket through better training. This tape is intended for store managers, MITs, and supervisors. Today we are looking at scheduling. One way of lowering your labor costs is to utilize a standard method of weekly scheduling. I believe that by developing a standard method for determining your weekly labor needs and scheduling for those needs accordingly, you as a store manager can lower your labor expense by 1.5% in the first week with very little difficulty. The scheduling process is actually a very simple application of mathematical formulas during which you A. determine your hourly sales activity, B. determine the average number of people that you would need to produce and deliver those pizzas, and C. to review and modify your schedule on a daily, weekly, hourly, and even quarter-hourly and minutely basis as you are operating your pizza store. The four basic tools that you will need to complete an accurate schedule are: 1. 3 or 4 weekly HSPPs with total weekly sales of no more than 3 to 5% variation from the total weekly sales for the week that you are projecting. 2. The weekly schedule worksheet. And 3. A blank schedule. Blank copies of these 3 forms can be found in the training packet that accompanies this tape. Product code numbers for 2 of these forms are located in the lower left-hand corner of the form and can be ordered from the Emporium by simply requesting these numbers. The fourth tool that you would need to complete an accurate schedule is one that you will need to develop yourself. That is, a staff of well-trained, dependable Domino's Pizza employees. To begin drafting our first schedule, take a minute to calculate next week's total projected sales. Take into account any predicted weather, special events, promotions, and other key sales factors. Then find the last 3 or 4 hourly sales and payroll percentage charts with total weekly sales of approximately the same as that which you are projecting for this week. Again, do not use HSPPs with total sales that vary by more than 3 to 5% for the total week. If you are in a military base or campus store, or you have recently experienced a holiday or severe weather, you may want to skip any week with unusual sales. Try to find the last 3 or 4 weeks' records that will be most like next week's projected sales. Turn the tape off until you have these forms, then start the tape again. Let's take a few moments to discuss the HSPP. Some stores will have a different format for their HSPP. This depends on owner preference, but the information is still basically the same. We will be using the new corporate hourly sales and payroll percentage form for discussion. A copy of this form has been included in your tape package. More forms can be purchased through the Emporium by asking for Form 6005. The HSPP has been designed to function in 2 situations. The first is to record hourly sales as they are occurring during the store. For this use of the HSPP, sales data should be recorded no more than 15 minutes after the close of each hour. By utilizing the HSPP and keeping it up to date, you can gauge the sales activity that you will expect for the rest of the evening against the sales you have projected on your schedule. The second appropriate use for the hourly sales and payroll percentage sheet is to use it as a guide to develop statistical data for projecting accurate sales activity on any given night of the week. Let's take a look now and see how this is done. When looking at the hourly sales and payroll percentage form, you will notice that under the number of pizzas column in each day's numbers, there are slashed lines through the boxes. This diagonal line is designed to separate the total number of pizzas sold during that hour, which should be written on the top, from the carry-out pizzas, which would be written on the bottom of the diagonal line. By looking at our first hour for Monday of the 4 weeks that we are surveying, you will notice that the average of 4, 5, 4, and 3 pies per hour turns out to be 4 pies per hour. You will also notice that we have averaged 1 carryout during that hour on each Monday for a 4-week period. That is a simple process for determining what the average number of pizzas is that you can expect for any hour of business from using a backlog of comparable HSPPs. If you are to repeat this process for the 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock hour, you will see in the first week 4 pizzas, second week 4 pizzas, third week 4 pizzas. In the fourth week, 7 pizzas were sold during that hour. Adding them together, we find that the total of 19 pizzas divided by 4 gives us approximately a 5 pizza average. For that hour, by following the same process for the carryout orders, we see that about 1 pizza for the 12 o'clock to the 1 o'clock hour can be expected to be sold as a carryout order. Continue this process of computing the average pie sold total and the average pie sold carryout for each hour of your entire week. Be sure that if you have a day that has any uncharacteristically high pie hours or high total day sales, you consider or not there were unusual circumstances at work causing that effect. Be sure to consider whether or not those same effects could take place during the day or hour which you are projecting. Take your answers and write it into the weekly schedule worksheet. Do the same with each of your answers, putting your average pie counts for each hour into the weekly projected schedule worksheet. Turn off the tape at this point while you complete your computations and come back once you are finished.
For instance, we use a basic criteria that we need one driver for at least 4 to 5 pies per hour. That's basically what we work on. It's just a guideline. I mean, a lot of times it's better to have 2 drivers for 4 pies per hour, but we do generally go on 1 driver per 4 to 5 pies per hour. Now on the inside, we generally can have 1 inside person per 16 pies per hour.
As you have just heard, translating your projected sales into actual labor needs will involve the use of several formulas. These formulas will depend on a number of variables at each store. These variables might include such factors as the size of your delivery area, the amount of traffic during the hour at which you are projecting, weather conditions, the level of training of each of your employees. In any case, the next step for you in computing your schedule is to translate the pies per hour into labor needs. By doing this, you'll need to consider both the amount of labor that you will need inside the store and the amount of drivers you will need to be delivering pizzas. We will be using 4 as the number of deliveries per hour per driver. We will also be using 15 pies per hour per inside person in determining what our labor needs will be. However, let's take a brief moment to talk about how you can refine this formula for computation of your individual scheduling needs. One simple method for determining an individual driver's productivity rate is to divide the number of yellow slips that he has delivered at the end of a night by the number of hours that he has worked for that night. Another more accurate method would be to divide the number of actual deliveries that the driver made or the addresses that he went to during the night by the hours that he spent on the clock. As you can see, a number of variables could come into play in determining a driver's productivity. If, for instance, you have a driver who spends time inside the store helping while he is still on the clock, his rate of pizzas delivered per hour will be lower. While cross-training is an important element in the proper management of a Domino's pizza store, it is important for us to remember that the largest single area of wasted labor is inside the store. The best place to be using a driver while he is on the clock is delivering a pizza. By doing this, you maintain the highest productivity level for that employee, and that means saving labor. In preparing the information for this training tape, we found that the majority of store operators believe that the average in-store person should be able to handle 15 pies per hour alone. This varies based on the skill level of the inside employee. We recommend that an MIT be able to handle 15 pies per hour alone before he is left to run his shift. By increasing your skill on the production line, you can increase this ratio and dramatically lower labor costs. Managers and MITs should discuss this performance with each week's evaluation. Increasing these productivity rates for drivers and in-store personnel should be a constant challenge and a continued source of fun. Now, back to our forms. As I previously mentioned, we will be using the average 4 pies per driver per hour and 15 pies per in-store personnel per hour. Let's return to our weekly schedule worksheet and notice that on Monday, the average number of pies that we have projected between the hours of 4 and 5 o'clock is 4.25. We have also projected that we will most likely encounter no carryouts during that hour. This means that we will need to have at least one person inside and one driver delivering during that hour. However, because we have projected 4.25 instead of an even 4 pizzas, we probably will need to have someone coming on to the schedule during the last few minutes of the 4 to 5 o'clock hour in anticipation of the 5 o'clock dinner rush. Insert the numbers on your weekly schedule worksheet in the appropriate columns, one driver and one in-store person into the 4 to 5 o'clock slot on Monday. Now let's look at the 5 to 6 o'clock hour. We have projected a total of 13 pizzas and 4 carry-out pizzas. This means that during that hour, we will still need one inside person to manufacture the pizzas and 2 drivers to deliver, with possibly one more person coming on at the close of that hour in anticipation of the dinner rush. Continue this process throughout the rest of the week on your weekly schedule worksheet. Once you have completed projecting your labor needs for these hours, we will show you how to compute whether or not the labor cost for those man hours will fit into your projected labor guideline. In summary, the first step is to project your sales. The second step is to compute your average pie counts per hour. The third step is to subtract carry-out orders from your total pizzas delivered and divide the number by your driver ratio. The fourth step is to divide your total pizzas for the hour by your in-store personnel ratio and write these numbers into your worksheet. Turn off the tape until you have completed these steps. Checking the labor cost projection of your projected schedule is a simple task. First, total the columns under man-hours needed inside and man-hours needed delivery. At the bottom of that column, insert the average hourly wage that you are paying people in each of these positions. Multiply those numbers to come up with your total inside and outside labor for the evening. Then simply divide this number, as you would when computing actual labor, by your projected net sales. This should give you a labor percentage that will fall within the guidelines of the recommended labor percentages for your store. If you find that the labor percentage that you have projected for that day's activity is not in line with the recommended labor guidelines for your store on a night of that volume, go back and check the hours where you had fractions, such as 5 to 6 o'clock and 6 to 7 o'clock on this example. A mistake that we frequently make is to overschedule for these hours. See if you can trim this labor by a half or quarter of a man-hour at different points throughout the night. Do this for each of the 7 nights of your projected schedule worksheet form. After you have done that, come back for more instruction on simply scheduling. Once again, a brief recap of the procedures you should follow while the tape is turned off. 1. Total your columns of your man-hours needed inside and outside. 2. Multiply those numbers by your average hourly wage. 3. Total labor for the day. 4. Divide your labor by your projected sales. 5. Compare your projected labor percentage with your labor goal for that volume. 6. Make refinements to your man-hour needs to make your labor guidelines coincide. You may now turn off the tape.
I think it's crucial at the very beginning that you start with a quality employee. You're going to have nothing but scheduling nightmares if you hire people who are undependable, who don't carry the kind of image we're after, who don't meet many of the other performance standards that we require in our operations. So the key is to start with a quality person.
Choosing the right people for the right job is one of the finest points of management that a good Domino's Pizza manager can have. As we identified earlier, different drivers will operate at different levels of productivity depending on their motivation, their training, and other circumstances that can be controlled by the manager. Identifying which person can fill which need on the schedule is truly an art form. The two most important things you can consider when choosing the right people for the right job are, number 1, the individual's capabilities, as demonstrated by their most recent performance in the store, and 2, any individual needs that an employee may have. In order to schedule for an hour in which we expect to sell 18 pizzas, we may find that Tracy, Clark, and Chris will each be capable of delivering 5 pizzas per hour, while Terry is only capable of delivering 3 pizzas per hour. This is because Terry is pretty new and does not know the delivery area as well as the other 3 drivers. Another important factor to consider is employee morale. If we know that Terry has a stamp club meeting every Wednesday night that he would prefer to be at, it makes sense for us to try to accommodate him and not schedule him for that night. To completely ignore his request will lower his morale and productivity, as well as the morale and productivity of our entire crew. Try to stick with firm policies for allowing time off and schedule deviations. Also, do your best to accommodate your crew in the most team-like fashion that you can. Overscheduling is a big problem in our stores. One common tendency that we need to avoid is overscheduling for the manager's night off. If we are to project our sales accurately and schedule accordingly, our MIT should have no problem handling the store. Overscheduling only causes the operation to bog down. It makes managing the crew more difficult for the manager in training, and it results in much higher labor. We have seen that stores with labor cost problems generally lose control of their labor on Monday and Tuesday when the manager is off. At the end of these nights, the store may have a 30% week-to-date labor, and then the manager has to spend the rest of the week trying to bring that labor down. The notion of fixing that labor is a myth. Once the money is spent, it's gone. Cutting back for the rest of the week will only make service suffer. We can never recover labor cost. We can only run good labor for tonight. Another troubleshooting technique that we can employ is to be regular with our schedule. Always post it no later than 4 o'clock Friday evening. Let your crew know that they can depend on that schedule to be there by that time. Be fair in all of your schedule considerations. Try not to play favorites. Also, be consistent at all times with your schedule. People need to know that they can count on a regular number of hours in order for them to be able to schedule their own lives and their financial affairs. Be firm. Once you've established a schedule, stick by it. Don't let people think that the schedule has no meaning. It is a major management tool for one of the most important resources in your operation, your people. Don't compromise it. Have a system for special requests. Each store may choose to do this in their own individual way. Developing a system that meets the needs of your crew is one of the ways that you can be an exceptional manager and have a great crew. Adjust your schedule every day, every hour, and every minute. If you find that your sales projections for Monday were 10% too high, then probably the rest of the week's sales projections will also be high. There is a good chance that you're heading for disaster in trying to control your labor. Some other creative solutions that we found in our surveys in the field included split shifts. Many of our campus stores experience a large dinner rush and then a lull in sales until the late evening hours. Scheduling people properly for this might include scheduling them with a 2-hour break in the middle of the evening. Remember, however, if you ever do use a split shift system, or if you ever do put people off the clock for a break, that it must be for a minimum of 30 minutes, and the employee must have the option of leaving the premises to spend that time doing whatever they would like to do. That is personal time for which they are not being paid. Not handling this situation under these terms could result in action by the Labor Board or legal liabilities for your store or Domino's Pizza. Actually, though, this is just a matter of fairness in conducting your operations by the golden rule. Try not to dominate a person's entire night if you are only going to need them for 2 hours at the beginning and 2 hours at the end. Let them know what you need and allow them to help you as a team member. Another creative solution that we have found being used widely in the system is a permanent schedule. The permanent schedule means that you have a set percentage of your crew that work the same schedule every week. As sales go up, part-time help can be given more hours on a week-to-week basis in order to accommodate the variations in sales, but the majority of your crew winds up with a permanent schedule so that they know every week exactly what time they will be expected to come in. This can make scheduling a lot easier. The use of beepers is one option for a store manager. However, remember some guidelines for the on-call system. As long as drivers are carrying beepers and are capable of going wherever they want, they do not need to be considered on the clock. Let the employee know what the period of time is that you believe you might need them if a rush hits. At the end of that period of time, make sure that you beep them to ask them to return the beeper, and let them know that you appreciate their help. Another good idea with beepers is to contact the employee occasionally just to give them store updates. This allows the employee to feel more a part of the team. It also allows you to check the performance of your beeper at times when it is not critical, so that you can be certain that it is working when it is critical. Finally, the key solution to handling scheduling dilemmas is actually the oldest answer in the book: cross-training. By properly cross-training your crew, you can increase the number of potential solutions to any given scheduling problem. This gives your entire crew more flexibility. Cross-training just simply increases your flexibility in handling scheduling dilemmas as they occur. Finally, let's hear from a store manager that we haven't heard from yet, the original store manager, the president of our company, Mr. Thomas S. Monahan.
If business slows down unexpectedly, I didn't send people home because I insisted they be there. And I think it's short-term thinking to send people home just because you want to save a little bit of labor costs that night. You just have to spend a lot of time on forecasting sales and schedule accordingly. Now, when you have a lot of part-time people on the schedule, as I did back then, it gave you a lot more flexibility. Usually, you had a backlog of people wanting to work for us, and that's another byproduct of doing a good job of managing, a good job of scheduling, and treating people right. People want to work for you. So typically, people have less hours than they want, and so if you have a problem, you have no problem getting people to stretch their hours a little to resolve any kind of temporary scheduling problem you have. And you give the people that have done the best job more hours when an opportunity arises.